Welcome back to our game of two halves. I'm Anne-Marie Foster, and this is the second part of my chat with local football stalwarts Peter Vannucci and Alan Dempster about the beginnings of amateur soccer teams in Bangor, stretching back over 50 years. This time, they talk of memorable matches, international fixtures, and the future. We've discussed where the game, the organisations are going, or perhaps going. But I wanted to ask both of you, what's your very best memory of a time whenever you were playing, involved in a club or whatever? Can you remember a moment when the whole world was behind you and everything was working out right and it was a glorious time for Bryansburn Rangers or Bangor Swifts? The best day?
What I would say there is you don't realise when you're young how few things you're going to win. Bryansburn have always been great competitors, but were they winners? Not necessarily. And it's only when I put together the 50-year brochure that I realised just how few things had won down the years, because you've got your league every year and only one team out of maybe 14 can win that. Now our first team, they then go into trophies like the Irish Cup, the Steel and Sons and the Intermediate Cup, but they don't have a chance of winning those cups. They also have the Clarence Cup and the Border Cup, and likewise. So our first team play in 5 cups that they cannot win. So they've got the league every year. And I would say the best memories were when we did win things, and I was fortunate to win a few things, including one. I went to a penalty shootout in the cup final and I scored the winning penalty, things like that. But you're maybe playing in front of a crowd of 200 or 300 people. It's not like Premier League and millions on TV and 60,000 in the ground.
No, but in the moment, those 200 or 300 people, it must have sounded like you were at Wembley or something.
Yes. Well, I would say on the pitch, apart from the things that we won, off the pitch, for me, the highlight down the years had to be us getting Ballywilly. We're on our second long-term lease there. It was already underfoot, before I joined the club, but it took years for us to finally convince the council to lease the land to us. And then when I was saying about the porta cabins now, we've got a clubhouse that cost $250,000 when we built it. Do you know what it's worth now?
So do you not go to the Bryansburn Inn anymore then?
No, we just stay up at our own wee club, with put TVs in and all that. But the facilities are great, and that would probably have to be the highlight of my time there, because that marked us moving from a junior club to an intermediate club. To be an intermediate football, you had to have your own ground. A lot of other stipulations, like there had to be a buy around the pitch, dugouts. It's all about criteria. But then you play at the higher standard of football, attract better players. So it was definitely the highlight for me.
Yeah. What about you, Peter, then? Can you remember any thrilling times that you watched Bangor Swifts?
The most thrilling time was about 10 years or so after we played the first match. Bangor Swifts won the Down Area League in 1981. I just have to look it up here. And that year they also got the McCaw Shield final, which was played at Castlereagh Park, the old Castlereagh Park in Newton Ards, where Ards FC used to play. It was a big final against a lower Ards team. And anyway, the atmosphere at it was, shall we say, spicy. Mm-hmm. And Bangor Swifts went 2-0 up. And then the other team scored a goal near the end. And then it came to the 90 minutes and the referee was adding on injury time. And after 5 minutes of injury time, the whistle hadn't blown. And after 10 minutes, the whistle hadn't blown. And at this stage, there was a bit of trouble at the other end and the police were called. The police sauntered into the ground with their guns and all to see what the trouble was. And apparently one of the guns was snatched off a policeman. So they had to get reinforcements. And anyway, that was all resolved. And then the final whistle eventually blew.
Were the players playing while the police were...
Yeah, this was all going on. And at that stage, because the atmosphere was spicy, some of the crowd from the other end had gone out of the ground and round the back of where the Bangor Swift supporters were and started hurling bricks and all into it. And it was a complete and absolute, really tense situation. But as I say, we eventually won. So we had a cup double, the league and the McCaw Shield double that year. So that was certainly a highlight.
You're not showing football in a very good light here.
We're looking.
But at the time, that caused a lot of trouble because there was a lot of follow-on actions took place, because of it. A lot of disciplinary took place. And, it was a bit hairy at the time, but actually winning the cup in the atmosphere, the atmosphere of the match is what you expect of a big football match for a small club. So it was worth that. But at the same time, as you're used to getting some big matches, in the Irish League or even the English League and Scottish leagues, you can have a great atmosphere, but then something else is going on around it, which sort of spoils it a bit. The only other memory is that once they opened the Central line in Belfast, Bangor Swift started to do trips down to Dublin. And at first it was all young guys going having a few drinks or so. And then as time went on, they started to bring the wags, the wags and girlfriends, so it wasn't as boisterous. But we decided to have one last hurrah in 1993. And I was approaching my 40th birthday and I decided to go along. And as it turned out, we didn't have enough players for the match. So I volunteered to go into nets. Now this is the only match, as far as I know, that the Swifts have ever played outside of Northern Ireland. And it was also happened to be my last match ever of a non-distinguished career. And it actually went into goals, which was actually rather strange because people were shooting and I was diving. And then I was wondering where the ball was, not realising it was in the net. But we actually won the match, even though it wasn't goals. And afterwards, we retired to a pub somewhere in South Dublin. Couldn't even tell you where it was. And one of the guys said, right, give us a fiver each and go next door to the bookies to put money on a horse. It came in at 16 to 1. And we didn't realise he put it on any random horse. So it basically, we all got to think 80 or 90 quid each, which basically paid for the trip. So not only did we have a free trip, not only was it the only match they ever played outside Northern Ireland, but it also marked my last ever match. And I left the club, at the administrative side shortly afterwards because I decided to retire because it was just getting too much for it. Because as was said earlier on, the amount of time, and Alan can certainly verify it, I certainly know that Alan puts a hell of a lot of time into it. It just gets too much and you need a break. And really, succession planning is the key to everything. And it worked out well.
See, before we move on, I need to say we played in Dublin every year. We went down there for about 25 years running. Now, it did get to the stage where we couldn't field the team because in the early days on our trips, we filled a 50-seater bus. And then you did well to get enough people out because I remember the bus going down O'Connell Street and Billy Hearn was running in all the bars trying to pull guys out. We're playing here in 20 minutes. And then we'd go to play the other team. And used to always be a wee bit wary because there they were limbering up and doing their warm-up and all, and our boys are just, opening another can. and a lot of times we did actually beat them. But then as the numbers dropped over the years in the trips, and then maybe there was 20 going, then we had to actually stop the football matches because we were never going to get 11 out of 20. Although back in them days, and I hope not too many people are worried about this comment, we still put a report at that stage because some of the guys were only allowed to go down to Dublin because we were playing a football match and we used to put a report in the Spectator. So we did about, how we beat them and who played well and all.
Even though the match didn't
exactly, at that stage there was no match, but the things you had to do to support your mates.
We were talking about the difficulties, about how there seem to be fewer people willing to really stick with a club. Are you still positive, and do you still think it's an important part of the local community to have amateur football pitches, clubs, working with young men and young women nowadays?
Oh, definitely for us, things are going very well. For our club at the minute, we've planning permission submitted for extension of our 4 change rooms and a first floor viewing lounge, which is really going to be the chairman's lounge. It's got a balcony, you know, where you could just come out and stand in the balcony.
And wave at your fans.
Yes, if the weather's bad, it's all glass, reinforced, of course. So we've got a lot of ambitious plans for the club. Now, the other side of the coin is the funding. You know, we're applying for every grant that comes around in the hope, and we've been working towards getting our own match funding. We've been building up the youth academy again, as said, over 100 people. And there's just a real buzz about our club at the minute. There are girls in the youth side.
Do you see girls as important to the future successes
Yeah,
of clubs?
the girls' football is really taken off. I started my own daughter Amber like at four years old. Quick story there, on our first day, 4 years old, and they finished with a wee 6-a-side game. And Amber got the ball and she dribbled around about 4 of them and stuck it in the net. And I went, how did she do that? You know, but a minute later she got the ball and she dribbled around 4 again and put it in the net. Only it was her own net. And I thought, this is going to be hard work. But you know what? Amber went on. She played for the Bryansburn boys teams, but she then has been in the ladies' football ever since. She's played for Northern Ireland every level, and she also plays futsal for Northern Ireland. Won every honour in the women's game over and over again. And she's now playing for Bangor. Yeah. So she is
Bangor star player.
Banging in the goals. So I am very, very, proud of her. And I honestly believe that was partly due to the fact that I didn't really give her a choice. She was my firstborn, and as soon as she was old enough to walk, she was kicking a football, and I was getting her interested in it. So I see a lot of the young girls coming along at 4, 5, 6 years of age in our current teams, and I'm hoping that some of them will go on to have the sort of career in the women's football that Amber's had. So it's definitely a big part to play. We're also very big into the community aspect. You know, this is what we're trying to develop. I got us registered a few years back as the Community Amateur Sports Club. And so we are trying to get the community more involved in the club and, you know, progress at all levels. You know, I like to say that we're not resting on our laurels. It's maybe very, very slow. You make progress, but it's not as quick as anybody would like. But equally, it's probably the sort of guy that I am. You know, you are ambitious. You know, you want to win, you want to progress. Bryansburn and winning maybe doesn't go together, you know, when I think about it. But that's how I see it, you know.
And Peter, Bangor Swifts, do you think the future's bright for them?
Well, Bangor Swifts, yes, the future seems to be bright because they seem to have a strong academy. But certainly, you know, to go on from what Alan was saying, you know, since I retired from the Swifts, I went back to supporting Bangor, and I have been involved, you know, with Bangor Football Club. I've been on the board a couple of times, and, you know, and I'm still, you know, the bookkeeper at them and the vice president and company secretary, all that carry on. But what I've noticed is Bangor reached the depth way back in 2017, where they were put out of Irish League football, and they've worked their way back. But in the interim, not only have they worked their way back to the top, you know, they started an academy, which is going very strong. They've now started a ladies team, which is going very strong, and Alan's daughter Amber's apparently the star player, leading goal scorer. And in the past, you know, Bangor only ever had one team. You never saw anybody down the street with Bangor colours on. They had Linfield or Glentoran or Liverpool or Leeds or whatever. But now you see more and more kids, you know, identifying with the club, and also see kids identifying, you know, with Bangor Swifts gear on as well, which is good that kids like that can have an identity. And it also highlights that if there are enough people interested to get kids like that interested in a football club or any other sport for that matter, to be honest, you know, and if the powers that be were putting more money and funding to provide half-decent facilities for them, you'd certainly find that there'd be a lot less kids running about with nothing better to do than antisocial behaviour and that type of thing, because it keeps them involved, it gives them an identity, and in later life, you know, it's good to, you know, whenever Alan was organising the 50th anniversary, we had plenty of some great chats about the old days, and I always remember when we were young, and after the match we'd been down Bangor seafront, which doesn't exist anymore, of course, maybe you would have had a few shandies and gone into a chippy on the way home, and you bumped into an opposition players. Many a time there was a standoff, and 30 or 40 years later you bump into the same person and you look at each other, and then you sit down, says, can I buy you a drink, and you have a chat about old times. And it's great to have that history about. As I say, it's the future looks bright for the likes of Bryansburn and Bangor Swifts, and hopefully for Bangor Football Club as well.
My thanks to Alan and Peter, both so passionate about soccer in Bangor and both so patient with me too. I hope you enjoyed our conversation and that you might like, share and subscribe. And maybe you have a little Bangor story to tell. Contact me. Until the next time.